The moment the black SUV flipped and crushed against the guardrail, billionaire Adrian Cross made a decision that would change his life forever. He closed his eyes and chose not to wake up. If you believe that even in the darkest moments, kindness and second chances can change everything, take a second right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe, because this story might just remind you why humanity still matters. The crash had been violent, sudden, and deafening. 1 second, Adrian was speeding down a quiet highway outside Charlotte, North Carolina, irritated after another ruthless boardroom victory. The next, his world spun into chaos, glass shattering, metal screaming, his luxury car folding like paper. And then silence. He wasn't dead, not even close. Adrian could feel everything, the ache in his ribs, the warm trickle of blood near his temple, the distant ringing in his ears. But through the haze, something unexpected reached him. Voices. "Hey, sir, can you hear me?" It wasn't the voice of a paramedic. It was rough, strained, and filled with urgency, but also something else, concern. Adrian kept his eyes shut. He didn't know why. Maybe it was instinct, maybe curiosity. Or maybe, deep down, he wanted to hear what people said when they thought a man like him, untouchable, powerful, feared, was finally helpless. "Stay with me, man," the voice said again. "You're gonna be okay. I got you." A pair of hands, strong, calloused, gripped the twisted door, pulling with effort. Metal groaned as the stranger forced it open inch by inch. Adrian felt himself being carefully supported, lifted just enough to keep his airway clear. "Easy, easy, don't move too much," the man muttered, almost like he was talking to himself as much as Adrian. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance. "Daddy, is he dead?" A small voice. A child. Adrian's chest tightened, but he stayed still. "Nah, Marcus," the man replied softly. "He's breathing. That's what matters. We help people when they're breathing. Always remember that." Adrian felt something shift inside him. The man, the stranger, had no idea who he was, no idea that Adrian Cross owned half the companies in the city, that he could buy and sell entire neighborhoods without blinking. And yet, he was here, risking himself, helping. Why? "Hold the flashlight steady, son," the man said. "I'm trying, Daddy." The beam flickered across Adrian's face, warm and steady despite the chaos. "I wish we had more," the man whispered under his breath. "An ambulance taking too long." There was a pause. Then, softer, almost like a confession. "Funny thing, huh? I don't even know your name. But I hope somebody would stop for me like this too. Life don't care how rich you are. It can flip you upside down in a second." Adrian felt those words hit deeper than the crash itself. For years he had believed the opposite. That money was control, that power insulated you from the randomness of life, that people only mattered when they were useful. But here he was, trapped, bleeding, and the only person who showed up wasn't a business partner, an employee, or a friend. It was a man with worn-out boots and a kid holding a shaky flashlight. "Daddy, what if he's a bad man?" the boy asked. There was silence. Adrian waited. The man sighed. "Doesn't that matter, Marcus?" he said finally. "Right now, he's just a man who needs help. That's all we see." Those words, they broke something open inside Adrian. He thought of the deals he'd crushed, the people he'd fired without warning, the families affected by his decisions, faceless, irrelevant in his world of profit margins and stock prices. Was he a bad man? "Hey, stay with me," the man said again, gently tapping Adrian's shoulder. "You're not alone, all right? Not tonight, not alone." Adrian couldn't remember the last time someone had said that to him and meant it. Minutes passed, or maybe seconds. Time blurred. The sirens grew louder until red and blue lights painted the wreckage in flashing urgency. "Over here," the man shouted, waving. Paramedics rushed in, taking over with practiced precision. They checked Adrian's pulse, stabilized his neck, lifted him onto a stretcher. "Good work," one of them said to the stranger. "Just did what anyone should," the man replied. But Adrian knew better. Not everyone would have stopped. As they loaded him into the ambulance, Adrian felt something unexpected: panic. Not from the injury, but from the thought of losing that voice, that man, that moment. For the first time in years, Adrian didn't want to disappear back into his world unchanged. So just before the doors closed, he did something he hadn't planned. He opened his eyes. Wait, He croaked weakly. The paramedics froze. "Sir, you're conscious. Can you hear me?" But Adrian wasn't looking at them. His eyes locked onto the man standing a few feet away, his son clutching his hand. "You," Adrian whispered. "Don't leave." The man blinked, surprised. "I'm not going anywhere," he said. "You're safe now." Adrian swallowed hard. "What's your name?" "Caleb Harris," the man replied. "And this is my boy, Marcus." Adrian nodded slowly, committing it to memory. "Thank you," he said, his voice cracking. Caleb gave a small, humble smile. "Just glad you're alive, ma'am." The ambulance doors shut, but the story didn't end there. Weeks later, after surgeries, recovery, and endless time alone in a sterile hospital suite, Adrian couldn't shake the memory of that night. Not the crash, not the pain, but Caleb's words. Right now he's just a man who needs help. It haunted him, in the best way, so he did something no one expected. He found Caleb, not through his wealth, not through his influence, but by following the police report, tracking down the quiet neighborhood where Caleb lived, a small, aging house on the edge of town. When Caleb opened the door, he froze. "You," he said, eyes wide. Adrian stood there, no suit, no entourage, just a simple jacket and something unfamiliar in his posture. "Humility. I wanted to see you," Adrian said. "Properly this time." Caleb stepped aside slowly. Inside, Marcus sat at a small table doing homework. He looked up and recognized him instantly. "That's the guy," Marcus said. "Daddy, he's alive." Adrian smiled softly. "Yeah, kid, thanks to you both." They talked for hours. Adrian learned everything. Caleb worked 2 jobs, struggled to make ends meet, but never complained. He raised Marcus alone after losing his wife years ago. Life had been hard, but he chose kindness anyway. "Why?" Adrian asked at one point. "Why help a stranger like that?" Caleb shrugged. "Because one day my son's going to be out in the world," he said, "and I want him to believe people will help him too." That was it. No grand philosophy, no hidden agenda, just humanity. And in that moment, Adrian Cross, billionaire, titan, untouchable force, felt smaller than he ever had, but also freer. Over the next months, things began to change, quietly at first, then completely. Adrian restructured his company, not for profit, but for people. Fair wages, support systems, real impact. And Caleb, he didn't become a charity case, he became a partner. Because Adrian finally understood something he had missed his entire life. Respect isn't bought, it's earned. If this story touched your heart even a little, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe, because stories like this remind us what truly matters. And before we reach the end, tell me in the comments, what would you have done if you were Caleb that night? Because in the end, it wasn't the accident that changed Adrian's life. It was the choice of a man who saw him not as a billionaire, not as a stranger, but simply as a human being worth saving.